So I'm gonna sound like a judge, it being 2 o'clock, April 5, 2023. Let's call this meeting to order of the Kitsap County Voter Access Advisory Committee. I have some handouts for you. Daryl's on his way here, so we can take one of each of these. Or no, just take one, pass it down. That's the better way to say it. Anyway, so as we begin, you see we have an agenda here, and the first item on the agenda is a welcome from Kitsap County Auditor Paul Andrews.
Oh,
Paul, take it away.
I always appreciate this meeting of the group every year because it really is our chance to be in touch with the community that benefits most from our services. And so us being able to hear things that will help us do our job better. We aren't aware of the concerns, the needs. We can guess, but we ask that we bring in experts that really understand and help us through that. And I think that's a good sign of how we interact and work with our community to make sure that voting is accessible for everybody. And so this is just one of those things that is nice that we can do. And I feel like we've been successful with the input that we've received from the group. The insights that the group provides to us are priceless. This is one of those things that I like to see continue year over year. And even though we do this once a year, we're always open for input throughout the entire year. So, we don't want you to hold on to stuff. We would rather you just bring it to our attention right away, share those thoughts, concerns, ideas, because, a lot of these things can be implemented throughout the year. We don't have to wait until just the beginning of a cycle. So again, I do appreciate the involvement and the effort that everybody puts into this, and thank you for being part of the group.
So going over the rest of the agenda, I'm going to spend you see that my name's at the end of all these things, but obviously I want you all to participate where you will. And as I mentioned, we are recording this meeting, and this meeting will be sent to everybody who's a member of this committee. And we will, Amy, are you willing? I forgot to ask you beforehand, are you able to take notes? Okay, I'm going to call, or minutes. I'm going to call on you later too to report on something that we discussed today. This is, and we will accept any feedback or whatever in the next couple of weeks before we make this draft report, a final report for the year. And as Paul mentioned, there are a lot of things that happen throughout the year that we find out, like, 3-4 months from now. Have you ever thought about this? I'm thinking of like the Braille pamphlet is something that came outside of this meeting. It was just by meeting with the Peninsula Council of the Blind. And I think there's more that needs to be done on that as far as finding out how we get that out to people, because as far as I know, nobody's accessing it, and I'm glad we're doing it. The next step is, how do we get it in people's hands? So some of the things we did talk about a year ago, if you look at the back 2 pages of the thing I handed out to you, one of the requests was making a PDF version of the ballot drop boxes and the vote centers, and I'll hold this up with the camera. For those of you that are attending remotely, I'll send this out to you as well. But we have done that. It is on our website. Somebody can print out a copy of all of the votes, all the vote centers and all the drop boxes. Vote centers a little more complex because we have to explain that before a special election, they're open on election day only. Before the presidential primary next year, and before the primary in general this year and every year, they're open the Saturday and Monday before election day, as well as on election day. And so I remember saying last year, somebody said, I think it was Kelly suggested it, and I remember saying, oh, that would be easy to do. And in fact, it was. And it's one small thing we can do. Open captions. We had a conversation about this last year, and I'm happy to say that we're vastly improved as far as that goes. And I haven't quite figured out how to make it automatic on YouTube. But what I can do is a lot of times when we're recording, I can just put that in a film program that, and I could just import the captions themselves. On YouTube, I can go in afterwards and fix things and edit things and that kind of thing. But to set them up to be automatic, I haven't quite figured that out yet, but because I agreed with the point last year that open captioning doesn't just benefit people who are hard of hearing, it benefits all of us. So it means you can sit in the movie theater and watch a film and not bug anybody around you, except that your phone's on. Okay,
Let me ask you, Steve,
yeah.
are you able to do that with voice recognition program, or are you contracting with somebody to do that manually, or
I'm doing it.
are you're manually inputting?
So, yeah, so for example, on YouTube, it will capture things. It will capture it incorrectly at times. It's like when you're watching a live meeting, you'll see funny things being said, but you can go back and correct it. And so that's pretty easy. It's a long process, especially if a meeting is like an hour long or something like that. It takes some work, but that's what I'm paid to do.
So
So
it is a voice recognition from the YouTube audio, the vocal. I agree, it doesn't capture it exactly
Right.
in the correct text, and you're having to proofread it.
Right.
That's great.
yeah, it's a lot easier than it used to be, because it used to be inputting everything at the same time.
Yes. Good for you.
So with our short videos, like we have one now telling candidates that they should, have somebody look over their candidate statement before they turn it in. It's only a minute long, and I've already written out the text anyway, and so it's just a matter of copying and pasting it and putting it in the right place. That isn't that hard to do, and again, I think it's valuable. So we're improving. We're getting better on that.
Super.
So
Again, good.
we also, this is not an access issue so much, but we did talk about advisory votes last year because those were confusing to people. And Paul and Daryl and I were talking today about where it is in the legislature. There is a bill. And again, this is not an access issue exclusively, because we get phone calls from people confused about what advisory votes are. How am I supposed to vote? And it's because of the way it's worded, and the fiscal impact isn't clear, and those kind of things. Well, there's a bill in the legislature that isn't quite dead, to eliminate advisory votes. So I don't think we're weighing in one way or the other on. I don't know it. I don't know if the auditors are. We'll just put on the ballot what the state tells us to do, but it would reduce some phone calls that we get if they do eliminate those. And these are advisory votes, are when the legislature does something that will raise. Does it have to be a tax?
I think it has financial impact.
Yeah, if it has a financial impact, then there has to be something on the ballot in November that says, should this measure be repealed is the second one, and maintained or repealed. And voters are kind of unclear as to how, are often unclear as how to vote that, because we do consistently get calls about that. Again, this is not just an access issue. And
It's a confusion issue. I agree.
it has, and the challenge is voters approved this. The voters wanted this, and so if there is hesitation in Olympia, that may be why. But these have been going on for a while now, and I think we have enough history to know whether they have enough history to know whether this is worth keeping.
I
It
think,
doesn't mean you're just giving them your opinion.
and the opinion, one voice from the cold, I think I voiced this last year, is the statement specifically, the fiscal impact, $35 million. That doesn't mean anything to me, because I don't know who it's impacting and how it affects me or how it affects my name. $35 million. Who?
I don't have that kind of money.
I don't know whether that's impacting, it's a cost to the state government, or whether it's a cost to the taxpayers, or in other words, that's a vague statement. So I agree with what you're saying, is that a lot of improvements can be made there or get rid of.
We'll see what happens.
Good to know.
Do the auditors have
The position was to remove advisory votes from the ballot. that the advisory votes do create confusion, but moreover, the advisory votes take up a lot of space on the ballot. They're top of the ballot. So they're, because there has not been any action on the part of the legislature to act upon the results of an advisory vote, because of the prominence they play on ballot position, and the fact that we need more ballot space is all leading towards us saying that, it would just be better. There has to be another way of sharing that information, that clearly the ballot isn't, and the language that they're using to write it is confusing. Like you say, yeah, who's benefiting or who's hurting from it? What does it mean to maintain or repeal? Because sometimes they write in a circular way where it sounds like you want to maintain it, but maybe you really want to repeal it, just the way everything. Yeah. So there's been a lot of talk about that, but advisory votes as a whole, the position is that it'd be better than they're not on the ballot.
And-
What did they think about putting it in the state voters pamphlet?
That was one of the discussions, was that it would still be in the voters pamphlet as informational, but not on the ballot.
Yeah, in fact, I thought the legislation called for that, but I can't say that for sure. I
Yeah,
thought I
the bill,
read
like
that.
you say, right now, it is not dead, because it still does carry a fiscal impact, because there's a cost of putting them on the ballot. So for the purpose of the budget, it could be resurrected and pass this year, but otherwise it is dead. It did not get out of the House committee.
The AVUs, voting units, accessible voting units. These are units that allow people to go to a vote center or wherever the AVU is, because for 18 days before the election, it is in our office. There are stats here in this report that show that in the last 4 elections, we did not have a single person use one. And we believe that don't know, but we believe that's actually good news, that it's not because people with disabilities aren't voting, it's because they're finding it easier to vote another way. And that is either having somebody assist them with their ballot, or because a ballot is mailed to everybody. And as somebody pointed out today, if I can't see well enough to drive, I need somebody to help me get to the vote center to use the AVU, and it may be simpler to just have somebody help me at my home and assist me with the voting there. And so, but I don't know this for sure yet. And so my commitment is that as soon as possible, at least by next year that we meet, I'll have reached out and asked why we don't have, why people don't use the AVUs more. As I did mention last year, I think I mentioned this last year, I took an AVU to the Peninsula Council of the Blind for a demonstration. And I had somebody actually fill out a ballot. I had these fake ballots, a fake election made up, and one person used it. Nobody else wanted to try it. Nobody else wanted to. I mean, they all kind of understood what was going on there. So it wasn't that more people experimenting with it would understand it better, but I thought maybe they'd want to get a feel for it. And there wasn't really that much interest in it. They were more interested in the Braille pamphlets. So but we want to know for sure why that is the case. And so I guess the feedback, or the progress from last year is that we still need more information. So any questions about those things?
I may have reported that 2, maybe 3 years ago, just as a self guinea pig, I came to your office and used the AVU there, accessible voting unit, by the way, for those who,
Right.
the jargon, we're not.
Took me a minute to remember it.
I struggled with it and needed some of your office staff to help me. So it was a little intimidating. in my view, your other resources, your online resources, your videos are so user-friendly for people with challenges that I think you have basically self-inflicted antiquity. In other words, you've been so successful with your other projects. That's my view only.
It is, no, and I remember a couple of years ago, somebody who actually went to the Peninsula Council of the Blind meeting I went to. I think he was a regular here, coming here to use the AVU, the accessible voting unit. And he stopped doing it. And he was at the meeting last time, and I think he was still going. I haven't seen him use it at one of our vote centers, and our stats don't show that anybody has since then. So again, I think I just want to be more certain that that's why.
Okay.
And if that's, it's, as Paul mentioned, we don't know what we don't know. And we haven't asked enough. I haven't asked enough why that isn't happening. And I have some thoughts of where I need to ask. And I mean, the easy one is Peninsula Council of the Blind, but also going to the state. And because I want to talk to them about the Braille pamphlets a little bit, but for suggestions on how to, there's other issues I want to talk with them about as well. But at any rate, yeah, I voted on it once. I might have even voted on the old one.
I guess that was the question I was gonna ask, is do you recall, was it 2019 or was it 2020 or sooner?
I don't remember.
Because we implement a new device in 2020 that was different from what we had previously.
I don't recall
Okay.
when it was.
So I guess I would ask that if possible, if you're available,
Well,
try it one more
I can
time,
certainly do
just so
that.
we would know.
Yes,
Because we do have a new machine
Okay.
now, based on what we would have had in 2019, if that would have been when you tested.
I'll certainly do that.
Because the newer machine is, I think, easier in that sense. It's it's much more familiar in its the controls and things that I think the old machine was lacking.
Okay.
So if we could test.
I'll
that
do it.
again.
Is there a video out there on this, how to build the AV?
The manufacturer has one. We haven't made one. And so it could be as simple as doing that. Yeah, we could, I mean, it could be useful.
When they're doing the testing of the ballots and you have to test the AV, why can't we videotape it then? Go through that process.
Okay. No, that's a great point. So videotaping is something on the horizon, videotaping the AVU use. And if I use the old one, and I don't remember either whether I use the old one or the new one. The old one just came out with a little piece of paper that had to be duplicated. The new one prints an actual ballot. And so the question came up last time is, how do we know that I skipped over this part. How do we know that ballots are marked correctly? And, or if I'm somebody with vision issues, I've printed out this ballot and I'm just trusting that it's marked the way I wanted it to be marked. How can they find out? And, one of the suggestions was using a program called Seeing AI. Seeing AI is something that's on your phone. And I've played with that. And in fact, I created out of the mock ballot that I think I used for that. I used it for some demonstration of some sort. I marked it and I used Seeing AI to see if it would tell me which ballot I marked, and it didn't. And so that's one of the questions I want to have. I mean, it would read it all the way down, but it didn't recognize that there was a black box marked. And that would be something that would be important. And so I think talking to the Washington Council of the Blind, say, what kind of programs are there out there for people to have that will help them recognize that what they marked was correct? Because it's really cool what else it can do. It can tell you what kind of currency you're being handed. And it will read everything down the list. It doesn't sound as great as some live person reading it, but it does it right there, and it does it on your phone, and it's a free app. It's pretty cool. It creates, and in fact, It's so cool. I'm like, you can walk down the street and it will tell you what businesses you're walking by, and or you can ask what kind of scene you are, and so it's a pretty cool program, but it doesn't recognize this. Yeah, but when you have if anybody's suspicious and or just wants that verified, once they get the piece of paper, how do they know? They want to know that it's, just the same way that people that send in their ballots want to know, how do I know my ballot was counted correctly? And so sometimes we have a recount to show them, those kind of things. Anything else on any of those issues? Then I think we can go to open issues. I've got a few items on here, and then I'll just open it up. Senior living centers, I've been trading phone calls with somebody from a senior living center as to how we can assist there better. Because a lot of the disabilities we'll see in the coming years will be from people who are aging. And so they vote more than anybody else. They vote in greater numbers than people who are able-bodied and, coming out of college or whatever. In other words, that age group votes in very high numbers. In fact, I looked at our statistics, and I was just curious for voters in I think it was 2022, for the turnout of voters who are 100 or older. And the turnout was about 68%, which was right on the same level as the rest of the county. And you would expect that it would drop off. And in fact, it does, because people who are in their 90s and 80s and 70s vote at even higher numbers. So that's lower than, it's lower than people slightly younger than them, but it's right on pace with the rest of the population. So folks are still voting into their hundreds. So I want to have a conversation with folks from senior living centers to see how, what they need. I don't want to, how we can serve them, I guess, is the answer.
And to clarify, I guess, just on that 63, that's 63% of all of the voters that are 100 or over, not 63% of the voters that vote.
Right, correct. Yes.
Just so you're clear on that. I thought that was a large number when you first said it.
2/3 of our voters are over 100. No, that's not correct. It is 63% of people 100 and over voted, and that was the same rate across the county. Open captioning for live meetings. We talked about this a little bit earlier, and this is just something I just want to say that we want to look at it more. I'm going to be meeting with Doug Bear. He's the county's, I guess he's the county-wide guy in my position, the public information officer. And they have some new stuff with Vimeo, which is it's like YouTube, but it's those things come out looking a little nicer. And so he and I will be talking about things. And among the things we'll talk about is the open captioning capabilities of Vimeo if we're doing live meetings. It has a lot of cool features. I'm not quite sure on the accessibility part how much different or better it is, but I'll have conversations about that. I mentioned Braille pamphlets. We have a Braille pamphlet at every vote center, and we have a couple in the office every election. We started doing that last year, maybe the year before. I can't remember. Well, it was out of the I think it was last year that we started doing that. And it's a regular part of our process now. As soon as a voter's pamphlet is proofed and approved, I order a Braille pamphlet, because it takes a while for those to get produced. So it's going to be fun to see how that works in a special election, because we have a much smaller time frame to work with. But we've never done one with a special election yet, and we didn't have any special elections this year. So That'll be fun to see. But we had another Braille question, and it came up as to, we have, you know, on our ballot drop boxes, we have a Braille plate, and none of us knew off the top of our heads what those Braille plates actually said. So Amy investigated.
So to the best of my ability, I believe that it says official Kitsap County ballot drop box, lift flap located by ridge and deposit ballot into slot. Drop box is available until 8 PM on election day. Makes sense, but I haven't compared, that was just one of the Braille plates. I haven't compared that to any of the others. They should all be the same, I would think.
So we had a question answered.
Does that text that you interpreted or deciphered match the printed text for reading people?
So what
Did it match word for word?
nearly. So I think that there are some, so what I did was I went out to a Dropbox and took a photo of the Braille plate, came back here, pulled up, a Braille alphabet on my computer and tried to do
Super. Yeah, smart.
letter for letter. I think that the Braille plates are, they need to be cleaned, so it wasn't entirely clear. But I got most of it letter for letter. So.
Yeah, and I can't remember why this question came up, but I'm glad it did.
Scott brought it up, actually.
Oh,
when he
really?
went out to clean the drop boxes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so,
See, a fresh set of eyes. Scott is a fairly new employee.
That's great.
yeah,
Yep.
it was wonderful.
Yes.
Then I guess the question that maybe we want to ask to the committee would be, is that language relevant for what we're putting on that plate? Or would there be a better way of sharing information on the Braille plate? So that might be something that Steve will follow up, and
Mhm.
you know, we want to make sure that the instructions are clear, that it, like you say, is it consistent with other messaging that we're putting out, but you know, at the same time, we want to make sure that even if it is consistent, we want to make sure it's helpful.
I found it to be helpful. Again, I used myself as a guinea pig. Every time I go to the South Kitsap Fircrest Fire Station there at that drop box, and I'll put my ballot in, and then I'll back up, and then I'll close my eyes and move forward a few feet, and then feel for in other words, I'll go through the motions that I think a person with visual challenges would go through. And again, that's why I ask Amy if the words are the same, and assuming that the Braille is the same words as the text words, I found it to be useful because, like you said, it says, move your finger to the ridge and open and I was able to do it totally.
Oh.
So,
So you can read Braille?
oh, no, I can't read,
Oh, okay.
no, but again, assuming that the Braille
Oh, okay, I got you.
said what my written instructions were for visually able people, I was able to go through the motions and find the ridge and then the handle for the box, and it made sense. It felt like what the instructions were telling me to do. Again, I'm not visually impaired, so I'm kind of a biased guinea pig,
Uh-huh.
but it worked for me. So I think that's a step, Paul, in the right direction, that your feedback that you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways, I mean, you know, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so how would the Braille plate be useful? If, as somebody without serious visual issues, I can drive by, and if I have my ballot in my car, all of a sudden I can say, oh, I can just drop it off there. Somebody who with visual issues is probably going there on purpose, but they want confirmation that where they are is where they want to be, that this isn't a mailbox, you know. We have people who are sighted who still drop their ballots in mailboxes. Mailboxes isn't a problem unless it's on election day. They'll also drop it into, there's a recycling or it's a trash
Compacting
compactor,
garbage.
yeah, right next to our drop box over in Manchester. And
Wow.
sometimes ballots up into there at the Sylvan Way Library. I think there's no, they're probably right next to each other.
They're
There's
right
a
next to each other.
Book deposit right next to the drop box, and so ballots will show up in there, and And they're great about putting the ballots in the drop box, but if they don't see it until after 8 o'clock on election night, that's trouble. That's a problem.
Well, and they have also closed that book deposit
Mhm.
early so that they don't have
Well,
problems.
that's a good idea.
Same with
But-
the trash compactor.
But I think the other question too would be the location where we're putting the braille plate. Is it the best location? Is it a natural, for somebody that is, seeing impaired? And they're using their touch senses to find, is it in a location that they would expect to find a plate? That would be the other question that I would.
Bottom left-hand corner, isn't it, Amy?
So, yeah, as you're looking at the top of the box from an aerial view, yes, it's in the bottom left-hand.
Yeah,
corner.
yeah. Now, and one of my self-imposed questions was, though, I am the driver in the left-hand seat and I could reach out and touch the box. A visually impaired person who is utilizing the braille is probably not going to be driving.
Mhm.
So they're either going to have to get out of the vehicle or they're going to be in the back seat. So it's going to be a little more, it's going to take a little more motion or a little more effort for a person visually impaired than the rest of us who just drive up and open the box. I sat there and I was able to reach out and touch the braille, which was convenient for me. A regular visually impaired person is not going to be able to do that.
I know some, I don't know if all drop boxes have two. They have the snorkel side, which is the drive up side. They have a secondary drop slot on the back side.
Oh, I didn't. know
Yeah,
that.
so they are designed for walk up
Oh,
as well as drive up. I just don't know if all of the boxes, so I know the one we put in up at Port Gamble, Sklallam at their community center. It's a two-sided
Okay.
box, so it has a snorkel side for drivers, but it has a sidewalk side,
okay.
so.
They all do have two sides. I think there's only one box where only one side is accessible. But that's a walk-up box, I believe, so.
Okay. Wow, I learn something every time I come here.
We learn from you too. So,
Block the other side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, good. Good.
Oh, yeah, they're in the second side. So
Nice.
on Dropbox, I have a question. Is there progress with Hansville on that one getting moved?
Yes, yeah, so the Hansville drop box is located it's in a gravel parking lot of a park along the water. And we were informed that during king tides and other storm related things that can become, one, there's a lot of mud puddles and stuff in the parking lot. But two, there's also storm surge that
Okay.
affects that parking lot. So we've been working with our Parks Department. They've got the Buck Lake Community Center and park that's less than a mile from that location. It affords us the best opportunity, because of their space and their drivability and the lighting and everything that we would be looking for. It's a paved parking lot. So we're working with them to relocate the box from the park over to Buck Lake. There were some inquiries about utilizing the post office, which is right across the street from the park. But the post office, one, we would then have an issue potentially with that 8 o'clock closing thing. But then two is that their facility, their parking lot is not designed for drive-through traffic.
Okay.
So they have parking all around with a box that you have to then turn around in a parking lot with parking stalls. And so because there isn't a good flow of traffic through there, we were concerned with bottlenecking and affecting their business.
Sure.
So the county park is faster for us to get approvals to do, and we're working with Parks Department right now for that.
You people ought to feel pretty darn good about what you do because you're sensitive to real life out there and you do something.
Right.
So many agencies tend to be relatively sluggish, and I don't see that at all with your organization.
We try very hard. We recognize our importance and what we do for the community, and so we need to be responsive.
Yeah, well, that's good.
And to that extent, I guess the other part of the ballot drop box thing is we are also replacing a box on Bainbridge Island with a larger box, because the Bainbridge Island drop box gets so much traffic. We want to make sure that we can securely accept as many ballots as they're putting in.
Super.
And so we're upsizing that, and it'll be located in relatively the same location. It's just we have to move it slightly down from where it is. But the people that go there will easily see
Okay, great.
that box. So
Finally, I'm going to open it up for anybody else with any other issues. I'm just going to raise a couple of things. One is, and we've talked about this before, about having a pamphlet for voters with disabilities, something that explains how things can work. And these can be given to senior centers and anywhere else that could have those. And so my commitment is to have one done this spring. Other counties have done some really good examples of what we can do. And so I think we can borrow from the best on that. Also, we're on Instagram now, thanks to Amy's lobbying. And I guess we had an account forever, but I just never really paid attention to it. But for people who don't like Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, is a place where they share photos, and it hasn't been made uncool yet. So that's
Best efforts.
yeah. Well, I remember years ago when I was a reporter at the Kitsap Sun, and I mentioned that I had just started a Twitter account, and some smart aleck 18-year-old said, well, Twitter's no longer cool. Then so when businesses and people, because it was people interacting with each other, and then then people with vested interest had found it and made use of it. So that was that reason. I think it was a dig at me too, but that it was more the bigger thing. But I want to open it up to any general thoughts, any general questions, or any things that we should be discussing, not only over the next year, but at any point.
My only comment is that your observations concerning open captions is right on target with respect to not being useful for only people who struggle with hearing loss. There's so many foreign languages in this country now, and there are so many poor public speakers, and there are so many ill-prepared general meetings where audience participation is encouraged without microphone runners. So open captions is just wonderful. And my compliments.
Along that same line, I'm wondering, also a question I have is whether, and I know other counties are doing this, they hire people to do an audio voters pamphlet. And I was thinking about this more, and it's like, I wouldn't have an issue. I mean, it takes a long time to do a 64-page pamphlet, but maybe affording the candidates an opportunity to record their own, as long as they record it word by word, those kind of things. That's something I want to explore. But the question would be to, it's particularly voters with visual disabilities, whether that would be something useful. They have screen readers that can read it, and the PDFs that we put out are accessible that way. And the state's voters, if people access their pamphlet online, they can hear the statements from the candidates, but they can also use screen readers on that. And so, but I think screen readers, based on what I saw in Seeing AI, they lack inflection and they notice a comma, but they'll run right through a period. So, and it's all the same tone. And maybe we want the same tone, because then it removes all the emotion out of it. And it doesn't sound like, I'm reading it in favor of one person or another. I would have a challenge reading a candidate statement. I would be a little bit, in the last election, or in the 2022 election, in the auditor's race to read both statements, or in a county commissioner's race to read both statements. You know, would somebody infer that I'm not reading it fairly and those kind of things? So if we can get the candidates to do it, that's even better. But that's going to be a big ask, because it's going to be constantly hounding people. Look, if you want to do this, you can do this. Or we could just have a seeing AI read it and record that, if they don't turn something in.
I think it would be better though, to remove any perceived biases and to not have discrepancies between those who participate and those who don't. Having an AI at least read the statements, I think would be more consistent
That's true.
than other options. But I think we would want to play with finding maybe what the best, maybe there's a better reader than others, you know, just for that level. So there's, you know, so that we're treating all the same. But I think that's something we definitely could look at. I like the idea. I mean, we already have the option to do a video statement, which is audio and video, and few candidates take advantage of that or utilize it. Now, I will say that being a candidate, being in office, I do it because I understand why we do it. We do it for the community that has problems, or they're challenged in one way or the other. And so by providing a verbal interface as well as a visual interface, it allows, you know, the voters an opportunity to see the candidate. And I recognize that as part of what I do, that, you know, I need to make it easy for everybody. So.
And it's to your benefit for the general public who is educated and wise and who cares. There's a lot to reading people.
I mean, that's another factor entirely.
That's it.
But for me, it was more about making sure I was providing the opportunity for all, you know, to be able to receive that message of,
Right.
And we do have rules already around that video statement, is it has to match the statement as basically as written. I mean, you're allowed to add a few words maybe here or there, but effectively it is the same. It is the same statement as written. So
You're right. Yeah. You're
but
right.
I would rather, I think, take the statements as submitted and then run them through, you know, a software that would then convert to audio, and then we could make a audio. We would, you know, I'm sure there's some formatting that we could do with that too. So it would be easy to go through. You wouldn't have to sit and listen to the whole thing.
Right, right.
Maybe some ballot, like sample ballot looking thing where when you click on it, it brings up the audio for that particular. I don't
Oh,
know.
that would be nice.
Yeah, well, so on the sample ballot, I mean, I'm recording, it's my voice on the, if people use the AVU, they would hear me. Now, nobody's using it, I'm not taking it personally, but, you know, and my instructions are to keep it really low, low inflection, and to just, so I'm not quite AI, because I recognize where periods and commas are and those kind of things, but it's, and I can de-emphasize, or, you know, lower the tone on the last word so that everybody knows that's the end of the sentence. But, no, not emphasizing, well, there aren't italics in ballot statements, but anyway, yeah, along the same lines. If, yeah, we can look at, and maybe and perhaps talking to the Peninsula Council of the Blind, not perhaps, but talking to them and also talking to the Washington Council of the Blind, you know, to find out what are our options, what works best, and to talk to other counties about how they're handling it. And then we can come to a group decision on what will work best. But, and what I would talk to Peninsula Council of the Blind about, and any other group that addresses visual disabilities is this going to be useful? And I think it is. And, you know, I try to emphasize with candidates, the reason you want to do a video, the reason you may want to do a video is because you're going to be reaching a community that would rather hear you than try to read you. And I guess in some cases, they want to see the candidate as well, because it's not just limited to folks with disabilities, but It's not supposed to be a campaign piece either. So like, other than what a voter's pamphlet statement is, in a sense, kind of a campaign piece, but we really tone it down. You know, there are rules about things you can wear. You can't wear something that suggests you've held office or that you're holding office now. Those kind of things. And really can't veer from the statement. In the statement, there are rules about that. They can't talk about their opponent. All those kind of things are I think, important parts of, we're trying to maintain that the voter's pamphlet is separate from what you're putting on Facebook and what you're advertising, what you're putting on TV, those kind of things. So, yeah, anyway,
Steve,
yes.
Oh, and I'm sorry. My thought as far as senior living centers, I kind of want to focus on that this year because I know at least last year I had a few calls from folks who live in those senior communities who were concerned either because their outgoing mail was spotty and maybe they weren't 100% certain that their outgoing mail would be delivered on time for their ballot to be received on time. One gal called because she was concerned. The front reception desk had a special spot to collect ballots so that they could take them specifically to the mailbox, or the post office, but she was concerned about that. And are they really doing that? And so definitely, whatever we can do to bring a sense of reassurance to those communities. I don't really know what it is yet, but it's definitely important to me.
We used to go to the senior living places. With our mobile voting, we'd spend 2-3 hours at one place. Like if we were on Bainbridge, we would go to the 2 on Bainbridge, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. And we got nothing. It was just the people there help them with their voting. And so we would just sit there. When we first started, we would go there, register people to vote. But then the way they changed their rules was when you come in, they give you a voter registration form. And once you fill it out, they mail it in to us or whatever. And so, but we went there for years with our mobile voting, just to the Port Arthur area, Bainbridge area, Silverdale area, or senior living. And that's why we stopped it basically, was because.
Yeah, in our meeting before 2020, we had decided in the primary that we wouldn't do it. And this is, in case you didn't hear, but that's okay. We used to go to several different places in the 18 days before the election. Many of them senior living facilities, sometimes libraries or whatever, but we would go to these places and the idea was to provide, they'd take an AVU, accessible voting unit, and they'd assist anybody who needed assistance. And they'd come back and as Regina was saying, they would sit there. And so we decided that for the primary, we wouldn't do it. Well, then COVID came around and it knocked it out for the general election. The senior centers didn't want us then either. And so we sat through that and, the same, I don't know what it was like before vote by mail, but I've seen the numbers of AVU usage in the last decade, and we used to get hundreds and now we don't get any. And so I think those issues like you're talking about, I think those are the ones we're going to have to figure out how to address, because you don't want to tell somebody to hand their ballot to somebody else. In other states that would be illegal. It's not illegal here, but you don't want to encourage that. And so there's some questions that we'll need to ask. So I'm glad.
For me, if they call and say, hey, a couple of years ago, COVID, and this lady wanted her ballot, she didn't get a ballot, and I just took it to her. She said, come to the door, knock on the door. We'll come in, and that's what I did. I knocked on the door. The assistant came out, took the ballot, and she says, thank you. You can't come in because of COVID. But if we get those calls, I don't have a problem, either myself or someone else, going out to that facility if they have a problem with that. That's what we're supposed to do, in my mind.
You can't, I don't think, cover every possible situation.
Right.
And there are so many variables, especially with seniors. family situations, group homes.
We've got people screaming at us because their family member got a ballot and they're not there, and so why are you giving them a ballot?
Right.
So.
Right, yeah,
That-
it's just, it's impossible. And it's a public relations challenge for you as well as it is an administrative voting
It is, but,
challenge for you.
when someone calls and says, I didn't get my ballot, we have to want to make sure they get it.
And that's great.
Yeah, so I mean, we have a program with, that Amy's been, coordinating with the jail. But the jail is just one place. And, it seems like I was thinking of another situation where we go out and we'll collect ballots. There's like there's lots of these facilities, and so how to know where to prioritize in that. And I think our mobile voting thing worked for a while, and then it just didn't work anymore.
Sure, if we can, because I have a list of facilities in Kitsap County, and maybe one thing that I can do before each election is call, because a lot of these places have a van that will take people around town. Maybe I can make sure that they know their closest vote center is open on these days. If you wanted to arrange to bring some folks over, we would like to see them. Just to make sure that that's kind of on their radar in case people do want to use that service. That was the only thing I could think of really so far to help get people either to a vote center or get their ballot where it needs to go. So,
Yeah, and I had a thought, is there and I don't think this will work, but maybe it sparks an idea. We have folks that go out and collect ballots at the drop boxes. Is there some sort of way that there could be a ballot collection team that could go to places? It would have to be every bit as secure as they are for the drop boxes and that. I don't know. I mean, I suppose they could also bring a sealed one of there were blue before, a sealed blue ballot box or that's what they used to deposit it in when we would go out there. If there's a way to do it, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm raising the question, and maybe there is a way. So, anything else? If not, we're getting done 5 minutes early, and I always am proud of myself if I can run a meeting that runs shorter than scheduled. So for any, I'll send an email out to the folks that were not able to attend, letting them know that I'm recording this, and that as soon as the recording's available, send it out. And that if you are watching this via recording, if you can, let's see, today's April 5th. So if by April the 20th is a Thursday. So if by April 21st, if you can send any comments you may have, and then once I have all of those, then I can create a final report, and we'll go from there. So with that, our meeting is adjourned.